Hello and welcome to video on move, copy, rotate and scale. We'll start with the move. Now some entities such as the circle, you can just click it, grab the middle and move it around without having to use the move function. Same goes for blocks, because it'll have a base point when you click a block, and you can just grab the base point and move it around. And text, look for the square block, blue block, and you can grab that and move it. And lines, you can grab the middle and move that. Polyline works the same. You can grab the middle and move it around. But if you've got a polyline with a number of segments and you grab one of the segments, it'll only move that segment and it will stretch the lines connecting to it. So you can only sort of move polylines if it's one segment. And once you've grabbed an entity using this sort of method, you can use your object snap locks to put it somewhere else. So I can move that to the center of a circle which is in this block and it locks on. But otherwise you're going to have to use the move command, which allows you to move things with precision. I'll just undo all these changes. So if I select an entity, and I can either click move here or right click move, and it's asking for a base point, a sort of source point if you like. So wherever I click this mouse, AutoCAD will calculate the offset from my mouse position to the object entity and then move it using that offset, sort of a relative distance. So wherever I click the mouse, the entity is moved by the same offset. And using the base point allows us to reposition things accurately. If I just copy this drawing, we're going to look at copy in a second, and let's just delete these trees. So I can select these here, oops, and move. So it's asking for the base point. Let's take this corner of the building and I can move them over, and as long as I click the same point on the other drawing, it's put them in exactly the same place relative to the building. I'll just undo that. And that's really it for move. Copy works the same way, except we're just making a copy. If I right click copy selection, maybe pick the top of this station, pick the same top of the station, and it's placed them in exactly the right position. And once you're using copy selection, it'll keep it going. You know, if you want to keep adding things, it'll keep going until you tell it to stop. So you either have to hit the escape button or right click enter or click exit and it'll stop. So to sum up on those two commands, with move you can either do it sort of freestyle, I call it freestyle. You can just click wherever you like. If you're going to do it by eye, move it to where you want it to go, or you can use base point, where you click something on one, same position on a target, and you've moved it that way. And copy works exactly the same, except with copy, freestyling it, it'll keep going until you tell it to stop. Now there is a different method of copying using the clipboard. If you're going to copy just between items on the same model space, or between items on a tab, on a layout tab, you can use copy select. But if you want to transfer items from one drawing to another, or from model space to a tab, or from one layout tab to another layout tab, then you have to use the clipboard. And it works in the same way. You just copy and paste. And you can copy with a base point. So let's suppose these items aren't here, and I go clipboard, copy with base point, and I pick that corner there, and then paste. Because I copied it with a base point, it's asking me for an insertion point, so I pick the same position and it's moved it there, and that's still in the buffer now. That's in the clipboard buffer, so I can do it again and keep going like that. But I generally don't use the clipboard unless I'm moving between drawings, or I want to just convert something into a block quickly. So if I copy and then paste as block, this is all now contained within one block. I can hit explode to separate it all, but sometimes it's very handy to have everything together for quick manipulation. You might need to rotate it or something, but otherwise I would use copy selection. So I'll just show how we use the copy clipboard sort of on a real thing. If I load in, now let's just, this is a topo with a tree survey on. I'll just switch these topo trees off. And load in drawing with no tree survey trees on. So I'm going to copy a tree from here, copy with base point. I'll use this station top, clipboard paste. It's asking for an insertion point because I said copy with base point, and I'll put it on the top. And it's put it in exactly the right position. And in a similar way, I can select all these. I know that selecting those objects covers all the tree layers, so I can isolate those layers, select everything on the drawing, copy with base point, and I'll pick this corner here of the neighbouring elevation, and then I'll unisolate. Because I isolated the layers and selected everything, it will only include the layers I've isolated, so it ignores all this other stuff. So I'll unisolate, just delete these. And now I can paste, and it was this corner of the building, and it's transferred them over to exactly the right position using a base point, and all the entities are separate. If I just undo that, it's still in the buffer, so I'll go paste as block and put it on this corner. And all my trees are in a block, which is useful. Always use block first of all if you're transferring trees, say, onto a proposed, because you may need to rotate or something. We'll look at that later on, and it'll save you having to select every single entity or the layers and isolating, etc, etc. It's best just to have it as a block. You can explode the block at any time, but once you're sure everything's correct. So that's a sort of use for it, and you have to use the clipboard between drawings. And the real use of that, of course, is because you've done your tree survey on the topo, the architect then sends you his proposed, and we'll call this road and these buildings his proposed, and he wants you to put your trees on so you can carry out an assessment, implication assessment, etc. So I've still got my trees in the buffer, so I can go paste as block, use the same corner that I picked it with, hide the topo trees because they'll probably be on, and you can now carry out your implication assessment. And it's best to in this situation, if you can, leave your trees as a block, because 2-3 months down the road he might send you an updated proposed, and you can just grab your trees. You know where the base point is. It's got this little blue box here, and you can then just transfer them over again to the next drawing, and it all saves time in the future. So moving on to rotate function, which is up here, I'll just close all these drawings. So I'll just load in a fresh drawing. Select an object, entity, right click, rotate. It wants a base point because it will rotate around the base point, so if I just click it anywhere in the middle, it'll just rotate with my mouse. And if you're freestyling it, you can just click when you're happy with its position. I can say pick on the corner, and it'll rotate around that corner. You can also put in a rotate value. So I can say rotate, and if I put in 45 degrees, it's rotated it anti-clockwise around that corner 45 degrees. By default, AutoCAD positive values go anti-clockwise. So if I rotate that again and put in minus 45, it will now go clockwise back to where it was. You can change that if you like. It's probably best just to get used to it. I'm always used to going clockwise. If you put in 90 degrees, you think it will go 90 degrees clockwise. And if you want it to do that, then type units and just click clockwise. So if I now rotate and put in 45, it's gone clockwise. But generally, it's best to get used to it, to be honest, to save you having to do this every time. So now 45 plus 45 will go anti-clockwise. 45 again, it's gone back. But the most important method of managing the rotation is using the reference. If I just draw a line, say from this corner, just anywhere, and I want to rotate this so that this elevation here lines up with this elevation, you click your entity, you rotate. It wants a base point. I want it to rotate about that point, and then it's asking for reference, or I can right click reference, and I want this line. So if I put a point here and then lock it onto this line, it's positioned it as I want it. And it's a very important thing to understand. I'll do it again with something else. Let's just suppose that, I mean, we wouldn't be involved in moving dwellings around, but let's just suppose that this has got to be moved and rotated so that this elevation of the garage is in line with this boundary. So if I just move it down here and click the items and rotate, that's the common base point. I want it to rotate around that point so that this is in line with this boundary. So I use reference and then click the item which I want to rotate and just lock it onto this straight line. Doesn't matter where I click it, and it's shifted it nicely. And I might just want to move it away slightly. And using the reference method is very important. I'm just going to run through that one more time. So we're just going to suppose this has to be shifted along this again. So it asks for the base point, because I want this corner of the garage to stay on this line, so that's the common base point, reference. And now it wants me to, if you like, pick a base point again for the rotation. So I start with that again, and then the second click is the objects which are moving, and the third click is the reference line, and then just move it. So that's that really, and we're going to look at that in more detail on a final demo, which is going to cover all of the copy, rotate and scale all in one go. So now let's look at scale. I'll just get rid of him. And scale is selectable up here, or right clicking again. If I, let's just pick a tree, right click scale, and again it wants a base point to scale from. So if I click down here, and as I move the mouse, the object is scaling in size but also in distance from where I click the mouse. And this is what I sort of call freestyle scaling. You're just doing it by eye. And then I might want to just move that. And if I scale sort of nearer the center, then it's just scaling the actual object rather than moving it. It is moving it very slightly because I wasn't absolutely dead center, but and doing it that way is good for just sort of indicative work. If I wanted to add a bit of woodland down here, so I'm using the copy with multiple till I say stop, then maybe a bigger one. And then I might want an even bigger one, so I can take one of these, scale it up, and I'll have one more over here. But for accurate scaling, we need to do things slightly differently. If I copy him, stick him there, 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 and because this is a block, it shows the scale factor, which is 1. And if I say scale, I can put the scale factor in. If I put 1 in, it just multiplies everything by 1, nothing changes. If I put in 2, it's multiplied everything by 2, it's doubled its size. Its scale factor is now 2. And if I put in 0.5, it's halved its size. And you can see the scale factor there. Generally you wouldn't mess around changing the X from the Y. I can't see how we'd need to do that for our work. If I change the Y scale to 1, so along the Y axis the size is the same as the original, but on the X axis it's doubled because X is 2 and the Y is 1. Like I said, you generally would never need to do that. And in the same sense, the Y axis is doubled and the X axis is halved. And the only time really you would need to type in the scale factor is if you're converting from meters to millimeters for our sort of work. If I typed in, I know we're in meters, if I just measure something, yeah, this road width is 6.7, so it can't be millimeters, so it must be meters. And if I grab a tree and scale it by 1,000, this tree is now in millimeters, if you like, while the rest of the drawing's in meters. I'll just undo that. So if I wanted to convert the whole drawing to millimeters, you just put in 1,000 and the whole drawing is now in millimeters. So if I measure the distance, it's now 6778, so it's millimeters. And to turn a millimeters drawing back into meters, you scale 0.001. So you're multiplying it by 0.001, which is the same as dividing it by 1,000. And it's gone back to meters. Just measure that. There you go. And as with the rotate, you can use a reference point to scale something to fit a particular size precisely. I'm going to use a FreeDWG. Now this is a FreeCAD's website, www.freecads.com. I like this site because there's no advertising. They don't need you to make an account or sign in or anything like that. It's just CADs created by professionals for use by professionals, and they're completely free to use. If we look at the small print, we'd ask you to read the small print, but to be honest, there isn't any. There's no strings attached, and it's good. Everything on our site is free to download, no account, no subscription, no cost. So if I just go to transportation, and I'm just going to find a car, and you literally just download and save it. I've already done that, so I'm not going to do it. I've got it in my list somewhere. Here it is. And you get a car. Now I do believe these are all in millimeters. I'm just going to copy that. I have to do it to the clipboard because it's on a different drawing. But I'm going to paste it as a block because there's lots of entities. I don't want to have to select them all. I'll just click it somewhere. And as you can see, it's in millimeters. So I'm just going to click it, scale, just click the base point here somewhere and put in 0.001 to bring it down to meters. And then I'm just going to move it somewhere, let's say here into this garage. And I'm just going to hit rotate in the middle and just do it by eye to get it a little bit more aligned. So let's suppose I wanted this car to be scaled up so that it exactly fitted this garage. I mean, you wouldn't want to do that, but just for the purposes of this demo. So if I just move, pick a point there, pick a point, I'll pick the center point on the garage. So then I'll click scale. Base point will be the center of this line, and then right click reference, and just with rotate, you pick your source distance and then your target distance, and it scaled it to fit precisely the garage. It's just a way of showing the reference method. I mean, you wouldn't want a car to fit exactly, would you? But so let's look at an example which uses all of these modifiers. I'll just close my car, close this, and open up a tree survey on a site. And this is orientated correctly, so north is on the vertical, 12 o'clock, and we got a tree survey on a topo, and the architect has sent us a proposed. And this is what architects like to do. They like to change the orientation, because north is at 3 o'clock now, so that when they put it on a layout, it's all nicely aligned because it looks prettier. So you've got a dilemma now of, because you need to put your trees on top of this proposed and carry out an assessment, do you rotate the proposed to match the topo alignment where north is at 12 o'clock, or do you rotate your TCP to fit the proposed. I generally take the proposed and put it onto the TCP, the tree constraints plan, but you can do it either way. So what I generally do is grab the proposed and copy it and stick it on the model space as a block, and as you can see, another thing architects love to do is work in millimeters. So the whole thing is in millimeters and our drawing is in meters. So I need to scale this down. So I'm going to right click scale, click the base point close to the drawing so it doesn't go off miles, and put in 0.001. So it's now at the right scale. So if I'm going to put the proposed on this, I need to rotate this to match that. But if you're going to put your trees and keep his orientation, then you need to do the opposite. So the first thing I do is move this. It's a block, so everything moves in one. You don't have to worry about that. And pick a common point that's on both drawings. So let's just pick, there's a station here. I'll pick the center of that station, and that station is here. So then I'm going to hit rotate. The base point is the center of these two stations. You can't do it by freestyle, you won't get that accurate enough. So you've got to use the reference, and you pick the source, reference, position by selecting something else on the both drawings, like this, whatever it is, bit of a gate, I don't know, and then pick the same location on the other drawing, which is there, because I'm locked onto this, so I'm just going to lock it onto the same one there, and they're both perfectly aligned. And what I generally do now is I put another reference point on for me to use, and I just draw a couple of circles. And a lot of my clients who receive my DWGs look on model space and wonder what these circles are for, and it's simply so I can just grab the block of the proposed, grab one of the circles, split them apart. So no matter what I do to this, I can position it back using locking this circle to this center of the circle. I'll show you what I mean. But I can explode this, and I can strip out anything I don't want. I'll just check that the proposed is on its own layer. I'm just going to select some of these. I'm being lazy because I should sort of go through the layers. I'll just isolate them, hit delete, unisolate, select those, unisolate. So I've just got these bits here. And now I can copy with a base point, use the center of the circle as my base point, and I can paste as a block onto the center of this circle. And I know that this is in exactly the right position. And I can now carry out my implication assessment of the trees against the proposed. And this is all here. I can leave that there if I need to change anything, and then I can just delete this and just copy it back again. And again, you know, in the future you might get a new propose 3, 6, 12 months down the road, and you just copy it in again, do all the rotation, separate it, delete this one and just lay the other one in, and you haven't got to waste a lot of time doing it. It's a fairly quick process. This is my method anyway. I mean, you don't have to follow it, but it'll give you an idea of what's needed to deal with drawings that have been rotated and scaled for that matter. And one final thing just to have a look at, because you may encounter these. I'll just close these drawings. And load in this drawing. Now everything on model space should be drawn 1-to-1. So if you're putting, say, a circle on with a 6 meter radius, you should enter 6 or enter 6,000, depending on whether it's meters or millimeters. But this drawing has actually been scaled, because if I measure this road, which we've measured a few times in this video, and it should be about 6.7 or something, it's 0.03. So this is completely useless. It's not in meters, millimeters, it's in something else. And if you ever get a topo or a propose from the architect and it's got the layout with the key and all the bits and pieces and the scale bar on model space, then you need to have a check before you start using it. And the easiest thing to do is just to measure the scale bar. Because it's 1-to-1, that should be 15. So if I measure from there to there, it's coming out of 0.075. So that this has not been drawn 1-to-1. This has been scaled. This is a very lazy way of creating a layout. You should be using the layout tabs, which we're going to look at in a later video. So we need to scale this back to 1-to-1. And there's 3 ways of doing that actually, but we'll go for the first one. You select everything and scale, and because we've got a scale bar, I'll pick my base point as this corner, reference, and I want to scale this distance, which isn't 15 meters, up to 15 meters. So I'll pick this as my first reference measurement, if you like. And down here it says specify new length, and you either do that by entering a value in or by picking the length. So I'll just enter 15. And that's been scaled using the scale bar. So if I measure the scale bar, it's now 15. If I just undo those, I can plot a circle, the center of the circle on this corner, and enter 15 for the radius. So there's my circle with a radius of 15 meters. I then select the drawing and scale from this corner, which is also the center of the circle, reference. So my first reference distance is the scale bar, and my second point will be this 3 o'clock position on the circle. So I'll use this quadrant lock, and that just locks it to one of the north, east, south, west, if you like, of the circle. So I'll click it on there, and if I measure the distance of the scale bar now, it's 15, as you can see on the tab. Now if you don't have a scale bar, but you know this, the drawing is 1 to 200, I'll just undo all those so we get back to the way it was. Select the drawing, scale, click a base point somewhere, doesn't matter where. If I put in 200, it should have scaled it up. Measure that distance. And we're up to 15. But I would suggest you use the scale bar, if there is one, to do the scaling. And afterwards you need to check, run some basic checks, measure a few things and make sure it looks correct. And cover yourself, you know, with the client with a caveat, say the drawing was supplied scaled and I've used the scale bar or whatever to put it back to 1:1. So that's it for this video. Hope it's been of some use. Excuse my very croaky voice, and I'll see you on the next one. Thank you very much. Bye.